we have today a presentation. Here is what I have. It's January Jumpstart session on the 2023 legislative session. I hope you all can see my screen. All right. So this is a time that you can learn about what we're doing at the League of Women Voters of Minnesota and get connected to the resources that we have and also that the National League has put forward so that you can understand more about our positions, our issues, and also network with others who share your values and your membership at the League of Women Voters. Also, if you have questions, this is a great time to ask them and to follow up with us afterwards as well to get involved or to learn more about what we are doing. This training will be recorded and there'll be a survey at the end where you can provide us with your feedback. And I will go to the next slide. So for those of you who don't already know, the League of Women Voters has a Speak with One Voice policy. The US League sets priorities that they advocate on at the national level with the president and our US representatives and senators. And in order to advocate for them, say if you want to send an action alert to oppose mining or something in the boundary waters, that would be a national issue. So we would go through them to get permission. And at the state level, I'll go through our priorities for this year, and those are set by our board of directors. And then we lobby the governor and the state legislature to enact the positions in our program for action. So if you would like to join our Lobby and Observer Corps, that would be the way that you'd get permission from us to advocate, or you could also go on your own, but you would want to let us know. And then at the local level, you can advocate with your local league on issues affecting your county and city, school board, etc. So for those of you who don't know, again, this is an odd year. So that means we have convention in June. And starting now, your local league can be involved in looking at our program for action, which is what's set every 2 years, and deciding whether or not you agree with what's in that, and decide what you want changed or if we should keep our positions the same for the next 2 years program for action packet. And this informs what we can advocate on during the legislative session. So policy is set through studies and concurrence. So the study is a 2-year-long process that you would need to get, you get permission at convention, and then you do a 2-year study, and then the next convention is when you would vote on it. And then there's also concurrence where if another state league has adopted a position, we can adopt that position without the study. So you all probably know more about this than me since I'm new, and many of you have been advocating at your local level for a long time. So hopefully you can all join a convention this year, and that's a separate training topic that you should join. So this year, we've talked with, so if everyone could go on mute, that'd be great. Thank you. So we've talked about democracy at the US level and the emerging issues as the two continuously supported positions. For instance, the national popular vote is something coming up at the state level, but the US League of Women Voters is advocating on it, so we are as well. And then Moore v. Harper is another Supreme Court case that we've submitted an amicus brief on, but that we don't really advocate for. We let national dictate the work around that through legal support and other things. And then voting rights continue to be important by protecting those at the national level, and emerging issues like reproductive rights climate change and gun safety are things that they are researching and taking positions on. So at the state level, we're working on democracy, ERA, and climate change as our top 3 legislative priorities. We'll get into those more on the next slide, but all of these are looked at through a racial justice lens, which aligns with our diversity, equity, and inclusion statement. And you can apply that through the work that we do, and you can see it in some of the bills that we're supporting. Our program for action, again, is this 2-year process, 2-year study that we have on, so like reproductive health. We have positions set in that program for action. End of life care was agreed on at the last convention, so that talks about policies around that. And then firearms, which is something that you all have received emails about on taking a survey done at your local league. So that would be to change the position in our program for action. So these are some of those issues that we're looking at this year, and just some examples. The legislative landscape this year is more diverse than ever. A lot of new legislators. It's people that a lot more women, so women's issues are at the top of the agenda, and it's an opportunity to have new leadership. So also this year, there's representation on our issues. We have, so climate, there's a majority supporting climate change investments, a majority supporting expanding democracy, and hopefully passing the Equal Rights Amendment. Legislative interviews is and continue to be an important piece of our advocacy. So if you have talked to a legislator, that is something that we would want to know, so that we can share it with our partners and let them know where we stand, or where a certain legislator in your district stands on the Equal Rights Amendment, or a democracy bill, that we can make sure that they vote in favor of our positions. And there are many bills, and they're moving quickly this session. So Amy will talk about the timeline and what you need to know right now. I'm briefly going to go over, so we belong to 3 major main coalitions to accomplish our priorities. The first one being We Choose Us. Democracy is an important pillar of the League of Women Voters in Minnesota. And in order to accomplish our top priorities, we've joined the We Choose Us coalition to advocate, work with lobbyists, and make sure that these policies can be implemented at the county level, and that they're supported by the Office of the Secretary of State. So Restoring the Vote Minnesota is a coalition that we belong to in order to have rights restored to those previously incarcerated who were convicted of a felony that are on probation and parole. Automatic voter registration will add around 500,000 or so, I think, voters to the lists, and that would happen when someone applies for a driver's license or a gun permit or something of that nature. And then pre-registration for 16 and 17-year-olds, making sure they're involved in the democratic process. And then finally, we really want to make sure that we protect our election officials and make sure that there are the policies in place so that more people can be involved in our electoral process. And I want to see if Kathleen has made it back from the Capitol. I can't see if you're on or not. Kathleen Doran Norton? No. Okay. So Kathleen,
Hi.
oh, there you are. Hi.
I think I used your link, so I'm Sam.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's good to meet you, Sam. So since you know so much about the climate change issue, I'm kidding. If you want to speak about the Minnesota Environmental Partnership, that'd be great, Kathleen.
Sure. So the League of Women Voters has been one of the organizations that is a member of the Minnesota Environmental Partnership. And we have been for several years. this really extends the reach of League with a small staff and an organization focused on democracy. This allows us to act on the positions that we hold on the environment and with climate. And every year in the fall, Minnesota Environmental Partnership puts together a set of policy priorities for the upcoming session. And the League very actively participated in that this last fall. And that's part of what we've done. I'm a little scattered. I came from the Senate hearing on climate, which was working on the bill 100% clean energy by 2040. And it was kind of a long way back. So what else do you want me to talk about, Sam, or is that enough?
I think that's great. With the infrastructure spending, I don't know if you want to talk about bonding at all a little bit.
Sure. I've heard rumors that they are gonna, last year was supposed to be a bonding session. They didn't get bonding done. And so I've heard rumors that they may in fact try to pick up what they didn't get done in 2022. The League is one of the policy priorities that we have with MEP is that process ought to be clear. And we've, right now you can look through, 200 different projects proposed for bonding, and you really don't get a sense of, well, is all of this investment moving us forward on our climate goals? And so we are partnering with Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light on an idea called a climate note. We've got a fancier name for that, a climate impact analysis. But essentially that for every project that is identified, we'd have a sense of, is this going to create carbon emissions? Is it going to reduce carbon emissions? Does it help us adapt to climate impacts? And just be straightforward. That's certainly one of the base values that we have as League, that government ought to be clear and transparent in what it does. So that's what we're looking to do with bonding.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathleen. I appreciate all the advocacy that you're doing. I hope some people will join you at the Capitol next time. And so Amy Calkett is been a leader on the Equal Rights Amendment and also a seasoned lobbyist. So we'll pass it to her next to talk about those two things.
Okay. Sam, I'm having trouble with my screen constantly going off and on, but I think you're just going to have to tell me if you can't hear me. I'll just do this in a blank screen. I'm not sure exactly what to review with people on how a bill becomes a law. Sam has a real great link that you can read that is sort of the structure of how a bill becomes a law. And I'm sure it's based on what both the House and the Senate rules are. But as you know, the more adept politicians know ways around rules. So you need to know what the structure is, but then you should know how things can change. So what to review? The most important thing, I think, even for beginners to keep in mind are what are the timelines and the goalposts. First of all, early January is when they start. They have to finish constitutionally by May 22nd. And that's a Monday, and they don't do any work on that day. They have to finish up. They can't pass any bills on that day. So figure out that's the time frame they have. Yesterday was the day that the governor sent out his budget. Some of that'll be made into bills, but at least now he has put his stake in the ground on where he stands with this budget year and what his priorities are. The next time to be looking for is the end of February, usually the last working day in February, sometimes the first day in March, when the Office of Management and Budget will come out with the forecast. The forecast that was called the November forecast showed, you know, $16 to $17 billion that they have to work with, although 2/3 of it's one-time funding. So you dare not put that into things, the one-time funding into things like school, paying for schools, because that's an ongoing one. But that, think about that, when that comes out, then after that time, then the House and the Senate leaders get to work on how much money they're going to be dealing with for the budget. Up until now, you know, it can easily change. The next ones to remember are what are called the deadlines for bills. March 10th has been agreed on by both the House and the Senate that every bill that is going to have a chance to get to final passage has to have been heard in all of the policy committees that it needs to hear. And sometimes, like the cannabis bill has to go to about four places, but it has to be heard in all the committees in one of the houses. And by March 17th is the second deadline, where it has to be heard in all the other houses. Then the final deadline is 5 o'clock in the afternoon on April 4th, which is the day before Passover and the day before they take their spring break. That is when all the finance bills have to be done and have to be sitting in the Senate Finance Committee or in the Ways and Means Committee. So you look for those deadlines if you are following a bill that you want to continue. Now, of course, nothing is ever dead. If it doesn't get heard, you're going to see it rolled out as amendments to stuff. But if you are in charge of a bill, or if you are watching a bill, that is a good thing to know. Well, you may wonder how bills originate. Of course, a lot of people have good ideas, but you can't just write a bill because you have a good idea. A legislator has to be in charge of writing a bill. And back when I worked for Olmsted County and we had local bills we wanted written, we'd find a local author who would give me permission to go up to the House Revisor's office up in the 6th floor of the state office building, and you meet with a policy analyst up there who is a lawyer who looks up the relevant legislation. You say what you want, and they try to draft a bill for you. Then you get that draft, you take it back to the legislator who looks at it and says, okay, I'm going to check with all the stakeholders. The stakeholders gather around and you say, not this, add this, not this, add this. Take it back up to the revisor's office, and then the bill is drafted, and they put it into into the forms that then can be taken around to be signed. You need to get authors. On the Senate side, they can only have 5 authors. On the House side, you can have the whole House chamber if you want to get them. It's important who you have for authors. Sometimes you can tell a bill is going nowhere if it's minority party and it's people who typically don't get bills passed. Those are just message bills. They're not going to go anywhere. But if you are in charge of getting authors, you would like to get somebody who is going to work hard, who is in the majority party, and who, if they're not a chair of a committee, at least are a person in good standing on a committee it has to go through. So you get those jackets, you get the people signed on, and then you take it, there's a spot over by the Speaker of the House is a little slot where once you get all the people signed on that you want to be the author, where the bill is then put in for introduction. And then at the next session, all these bills are introduced. And the speaker does not say, no, you can't introduce a bill, or no, you can't introduce a bill. All the bills are introduced, which is why at the end of a session, there's hundreds and hundreds. I think we're up in the 600s already have been introduced. That's why it's so hard to follow. Let's see. I'm supposed to try to. So anyway, that's getting it in. You can see the introductions if you look on what Kathy Tom is going to show you in a few minutes, you'll see where you can see the introductions. If you want to go through those every day, their session, and right now it's usually 2 a week, you can go through those 50 or sometimes 100 bills that are being introduced that day, and you'll see a synopsis, like one sentence of what is in the bill, and then just as important, who the heck is sponsoring it. Then you can see, is this something I have to read, or it's on some issue and I don't care about, or it's some legislator that isn't going to give this bill any legs. But you can read that yourself to find out what is coming up. On the bottom of the introductions will say to which committee it's referred. And the good thing about that is then where's the first committee you're going to have to be watching for. And if this is your bill, right away you're going to start calling the chair of that committee, or even better, the legislative aides to that committee, to say, when's it coming up? When's it coming up? When's it coming up? The problem is, with hundreds and hundreds of bills dropped in to be introduced, and most of these committees meet for an hour and a half twice a week. And for those of you who've attended some of the more fiery committee meetings, committee hearings they've already had, one bill can take the whole hour and a half. Sometimes you can run through a couple of them in 5 to 10 minutes, but a typical committee is going to have three bills heard. And so maybe 6 in 1 week. And how many weeks are there until the March 10th deadline? You see what's going to start happening in February. There's going to be big pressure on the committee chairs to hear more and more and more bills. And of course, that's kind of how some of these things get weeded out. Let me see. Once a bill goes through all the committees, and if it's a policy bill, so doesn't have to be held over something different this year, they are actually passing bills and they're putting it on what's called the general register. That means it's on the general register in the House and the Senate. It's up for passage in either of the main bodies. In the last several sessions, none of that has happened except little tiny local bills. Everything was, quote, laid over for possible inclusion. They never voted on it. The committee chairs just held on to it, hoping that they could use it in some gigantic omnibus bill. But this year, some of these policy bills are actually going through and getting on the general register. Well, if your bill that you're watching, you're lucky enough, it's on the general register, and then the majority leader or in the Senate or the Speaker of the House determines it's going to come up for a vote. At the session before it's going to come up, it's announced at the end of that session, these are the 5 bills that are going to be on the calendar for the next session. And then they have deadlines for when various people can offer amendments. And you can't offer an amendment from the floor unless it has been in the hands of the speaker or the majority leader 24 hours ahead. That gives both the Republican and the Democrat caucus chances to look at what the other side is going to offer as amendments and determine which ones they're going to try to kill and which ones they can accept and which ones they need to amend. It helps. They used to not have that, and the sessions would go forever, and people would come up with especially in the minority, all kinds of amendments to try to embarrass the majority and try to get people to break away. But now that no longer happens. That was a change thanks to when the Republicans ran the House. If it passes, your bill passes, it gets sent over to the other body, then it says it goes out for comparison, because all these bills have companions. They're introduced in both the House and the Senate. So then it goes over, let's say past the House, it goes over to the Senate for comparison. And then the Senate puts its own number on it and brings it up for a vote. If they add an amendment, they then send it back to the House, and the House can either decide to accept it with that amendment on it, or they go to a conference committee. I'm sorry, this is getting into the weeds. What is really much more interesting than all the structural stuff but you have to know the structural background, because that's what everybody has to work off. That think of how a bill becomes a law as a series of P's. There's the P for policy, which of course is the kind of thing the league likes to focus on. Then there's the P for process. That's some of that junk I just was telling you about. But there are some other P's that you have to be cognizant of. The big P's are personalities. Sometimes if you get somebody to carry your bill, who turns out is really, really, really disliked by the chair of a committee that it has to go through, personally disliked, not their politics. They just don't like them as a person. Perhaps last session they got stabbed in the back by this person or something like that. I mean, it's a personality thing. That does come up, and I certainly have seen that happen. So be aware of the P for personality. Also be aware of politics and power. Both political parties have bases that they have to talk to, people that they think elected them, and those kinds of messaging points will come up over and over. And sometimes they're enough to sway votes. So think of how a bill becomes a law as policy, process, politics and power, and also personalities. And now quick, ERA. The ERA this year, so you know, it's Senate File 37 and House File 173. That is the main one. Both the Senate bill and the House bill have the Speaker and the Majority Leader signed on as authors, not as first authors, but they are in the list. They're like the second authors, which is a way to clue in all the rest of the legislators that they approve this. That doesn't mean it'll come up for a vote. It doesn't even mean it's going to get a hearing, because I know that they are so busy the Democrats are, to get their stuff out, that they think that something like this can wait a year. That's going to make it hard if it does pass, because the people that want the ERA have to organize the campaign. Because to get an ERA in the Constitution of Minnesota, we are going to have a constitutional amendment, which has to go out to the voters. Write down those Senate File 37 and House File 173 and see what happens. The ERA in Minnesota it did pass the House in 2019, but it never got out of committee. It was never heard in committee on the Senate. It's not the same ERA language that is at the federal level, which is equality under the law shall not be abridged or denied on account of sex. The one that would go to the voters from Minnesota is the new language that they have taken from the state of Nevada, which just put this on their ballot this year, and it passed with 59% of the vote. And it reads this: equality under the law shall not be abridged or denied by this state or any of its cities, counties, or other political subdivisions on account of race, color, creed, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, age, disability, ancestry, or national origin. In other words, we are all equal. And there will certainly be pushback from some people who think some people ought not have that kind of coverage. Why do we need the ERA? I'm sure I'm talking to the choir here. As you know, the main reason is the federal judiciary has found that women are not really covered under the 14th Amendment. And of course, we don't have an Equal Rights Amendment to the Constitution. So the standard for review, if you are talking about harassment or some kind of discrimination as a woman, the standard of review is not called strict scrutiny. It's called intermediate standard. So it's harder to prove. And we all know that we need to do something about the gender gap in a lot of situations. Now, I don't think I have to tell you any more about the ERA. I'm sure you know 26 states have it. Even places like Louisiana, Florida, and Texas have a state ERA. They all developed them because they didn't want to support a federal ERA. So they have state ERAs. And of course, then there's Wyoming, had women voting back in 1867, and they had equal rights amendment in their constitution when they became a state. Well, that's enough for me. Go on to Kathy Holmes. She will show you how to find all this interesting stuff on the website. But I really, really urge you to think of this, not just as the 4 Ps, but as the best free drama you can either watch or participate in. You don't even have to go to the Capitol. Almost all of it is on the internet where you can watch it. And it's just incredible. It's like, think of this as a stage. The stage is the same year after year, but the play and the players change. And not only is it exciting and interesting and dramatic, but you learn something. Okay, Kathy, go take it from there.
One more thing about the ERA and process is in Minnesota, our Minnesota Constitution doesn't allow for, like, hear about California always having these ballot initiatives and stuff where the citizens get a petition and they get something on the ballot. Minnesota's Constitution does not allow that. And that's why there's an ERA bill for an ERA constitutional amendment. All Minnesota constitutional amendments must go through the legislature first before they can be placed on the ballot. So that is why it has to be a bill. Like, the citizens can't just band together and stick it on the ballot. That's not allowed in Minnesota. To change that and allow ballot initiatives would take a constitutional amendment, which would have to go through the legislature first. So yeah, so we're kind of stuck with our legislature, whether we want. There's no way to bypass them. Let's put it that way. So yeah, it says, Amy said, I will share my screen here. As Amy said, I'm going to teach you how to navigate this. Does everybody see the Minnesota State Legislature website? Mm-hmm. Just type in your browser, Minnesota State Legislature, and click on the leg.min.gov is the correct one. Click on that, and this is the homepage that comes up on a computer. It looks a little different if you're on your phone or tablet. This calendar here, this shared calendar, will be down below. You'll use it a lot, so scroll down to it if you're on a tablet or a phone. But first of all, find out who your members are. And the members roster is here. It's alphabetical for the House and Senate. This one is the House. And you can find out who past members were. There's election directories and stuff. You can figure out, you can go from here straight to their offices and such. The best way to contact your legislator is who represents me. And I'll put in I put in my address, and I have Jim Nash, Julia Coleman, and Tom Emmer, but Jim Nash and Julia Coleman, and you can contact them through this, or you can just click on them, and you can get on there. You can find ways to this is who you have, and then you can find them and go into the member directory, and you would find let's do Mr. Nash, he's on. And we'll go to him, and you can go to his page. There we go. And then you can click to subscribe to his email addresses. Does everybody see that right there? So you can do that for each of your own legislators and get on their email newsletters and such. And you can do that really for any legislator. It doesn't have to be your own. Moving on to committees. Let's go back to the home page. Committees, we'll do the House first. This is just a list of committees, but if you go up to here for committees, Senate and House, it will give you a roster. And this is a PDF, so you can download it or print it. This tells you all of the committees that exist this year and who's on those committees. It tells you who the chair is, who the committee administrator is, and their phone number. So this is a very, very important piece of information. And sometimes if you're trying to find out when something's going to get heard on committee or move to a floor for a bill that's going through that committee, sometimes it's better to try and contact that committee administrator or the committee legislative assistant for that committee. So this is a very important document. So you can either print it or link it or whatnot, and it's under committees, after you click on committees, it's under committees, and then go to the roster, not the list. And that's for both sides. Oh, well, there, my VPN is telling me somebody's being suspicious. So, so that's good. It's doing its job. So, okay, so that's for how you navigate, you know, find out who's on what and how to contact your legislators. Now, if you want to go and look at particular committees, we do a lot with elections here. So you can go to elections finance, and you can also subscribe to them. Subscribe is right here. Get added to the mailing list for this committee, and you'll get the updates when documents are added, when meetings are called, and they come complete with links to the bills. It's a very nice way to watch these committees that you're interested in. So if everybody understands that, I'll back up so you can see. You just click on the committee. We did elections, finance, and policy. This is in the House. The Senate has the same thing. Subscribe. This also will give you the membership. Some of the schedules are here, but there's a better way to find all of that, a much more compact way. So I don't usually use that way to go in there. That's just showing you how to subscribe to the committees that you want to follow. How to watch committees is you just go into these audio and video clicks. And well, and that's not, the host is not the best way to go to watch video in the House, is actually to click on your day. So this is today. I don't know if anything's going on anymore. And you go in the combined calendar, and say if you wanted to, if something is going on, I don't think so. They have live video, live audio in the House links, but they do not in the Senate. It can be very, they're not in there right here's live audio, but there's usually live video and stuff too. So you can go into from the House, you can go straight in through the calendar. On the Senate, you have to back into this homepage again, and you have to go to the audio and video. It's so weird, but it is what it is. You go to the Senate Media Services, and you go to the Senate Live Video. And then it tells you what's upcoming. It tells you what's past, and you just click on what you want. It's usually by committee or floor session. Upcoming, 8:30 a.m. And you can also have it notify you when it's starting. It'll send you a little alert or an email. So does everybody understand that? It's it's not going to let me go back. Let's go to the home page. Okay, so how I got into that was Senate audio and video. Click on Senate Live Video. You can also do the webcast schedule. Just the Senate Live Video is fine because it has everything in there. So if anybody has any questions on that later, we can go right back over it. And the shared calendar is just a great way to find out what's happening. We'll look at tomorrow. This will tell you tomorrow, and this is everything that's scheduled, all the committees. And this is just a big main list, and you can go into those through, that's a Senate one, through that, but you can also see them all. There's your live video right there on the House, but you can also go through the list right here, and it tells you all these documents that they're going to be looking at. State, local government, finance and policy. You can look right at those committee documents. I'll open one. That's the stuff that they'll be discussing and looking at. So this shared calendar is really wonderful for getting your documents and getting into the House video, but you can get your Senate documents there too. You just cannot get into the video from this. Okay, so then searching and tracking bills. There's many ways to do that. You can, this is statutes and laws, these and rules. These are current, these are currently in force. That's what you do. And you use that more to find out what current law is, or after session's over to check out stuff that passed. Bill search and status is for bills, and you can do it by House bills, Senate bills, my bills. You can do it straight by a bill number. Here's HF3, which is our big, well, bill not found. See, that's not working. Weird. Oh, no space, I bet. There's little glitches that, yep, see, and then you can look in HF3, status of the bill in the House, the text of the bill. And this is our big elections bill in the House. There's a Senate file 3 is, those Senate file and House files don't always correspond, but this one was big and important. So they made sure that they had the same number in both houses. But here is all the different things, regular deceptive practices, interference. There's just a lot of stuff in this bill. It's a very important one that we're tracking closely at the league. So you can do it by bill number. If you don't know the bill number, you can do a main search of House bills, and you can search by bill numbers. You can search by keywords. So you could do elections, voting, go. And there's all these different ones that mention elections and voting. And that's in the House. You can do the Senate or both as well. You can also search by chief authors. I'll find that same bill in the Senate. Let's see if we can do Senate. Switch to Senate. Lindsay Port is doing SF3. So let's look up. Oh wait, is she in the House? Why is it not? Let's look at both. Search by chief authors. Well, let's do Dan Wogamont. He's got one. He's got the one for permanent absentee voting list. So let's go and let's look what he's got. Now, these are what he's got. And his permanent absentee voting list one is right here, HF 477. So you can look at chief authors too, if you know who the author is, or you can just take a peek and see, let's see. We just saw what Representative Wogamont was doing. I looked at my representative as Nash. Let's see if he's producing at all this. Let's look at him. Oh, he's got 8 bills. What are they? I can look at him and see what he's doing. And I could look at Julia Coleman in the Senate. So he's doing these, and most of this, this is all local bills, which in the minority, that's oftentimes what they do. So, all right. So that's kind of how you do it. You can also, which is really cool, is you can do your own bills and you can track your own bills. You can track House and Senate bills. Now mine will go right in. You have to create an account with a username, email, and a password. And you just add in the bills. Now these are all the bills that I'm tracking, and I have an alert on one of them. This is HF 28. This is the Restore the Vote to Felons. That I've just been told is now going to be heard in the Judiciary and Finance and Civil Law Committee tomorrow. Here it is, tomorrow at 8:30 in the morning. So you use those little trackers, and I went into this. If you do your bill, if you've got this set up, when you first set up your bill tracker, you'll click on this, and then it'll show you create. You click on create account, and then it'll show you, and you create your username. Could be simple, your first and last name, whatever, and then an email, and then just a simple password. And then I saved my password so I don't have to go back in here, but then always click on I'm not a robot, because even when you go back in, you oftentimes have to click on I'm not a robot. So don't forget to do that part. You won't be able to get in. So that's bill tracker. So there's so many different ways to do all of this stuff. You can do, it's set by house, by bill search status, by keyword. You can also, once you figure out what bills you want to watch, you can track, and then that's how you track bills. So I've told you how to track members, how to track committees, how to watch everything, and how to track individual bills. So that's really all I have. If anybody has any questions, and my email is going to be up in the slide deck as Sam gets towards the end. If you have any questions, you can always email me. I can also put my phone number in the chat, and you can give me a call if you're having issues. So I will stop the share.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Kathleen. I feel like you've all just gotten a lot of information, so I'm going to hopefully make it a little easier for you by sharing my screen again in sharing where you can find the links to everything that we've discussed. So we have a great web page now that is seen here, and I'm going to click on it, and we're going to look at some of the links available to go to. So as you can see, we've talked about our priorities for this legislative session. They're at the top. Some of those other issues that they're working on at the national level, and that also we will be looking at the state level. You can see where the Secretary of State stands, the We Choose Us policy agenda, and also the MEP, multiple areas of work that they're engaging in that Kathleen discussed. So you can find all that information on this web page. Learn more about our partners, look at the program for action, which I discussed, and how you can make your voice heard in that process, as well as the Lobbying Observer course. So join us. That's the big ask for you today, is to, if you've seen things that you might be interested in following, or if you're interested in learning more about the process, we meet weekly and go through these things together about what's on the committee agenda for the week ahead, and also where our policy priorities are moving at the legislators, so that you can get up to date, make sure that you're continuing to contact your legislator about these issues. So I would just suggest that you go to this webpage, go to the sign up form if you're interested in joining, and I'll also include these links in a follow-up email to you. Also, we've got more information available as to what the Lobbying Observer Corps is, but, just sign up, and I'm always happy to talk with you as well. Like Kathy said, I'm also available to talk about this. So the session process and timing, this is a more in detailed timeline to what Amy went over. So if you're interested, you can see that in the bill deadlines, which Amy, by the way, you did a great job without being able to see the screen. Like it almost looked like you were reading the screen because you nailed it. The Senate videos, like we talked about, are hard to find. So if you just click on this link, it'll bring you right to that YouTube page. And same with House videos, find your legislators. But then again, the home page as to where Kathy was looking at their bills, signing up for the bill tracker, you can do that there. But we also have a bill tracker. It's not as, it's a lot more broad because you don't get to choose your bills. It shows every bill that's most every bill that's at the legislature. So it's a lot to sift through. And then the committees, those PDF documents that Kathy had shown. Some other upcoming areas to look at. We have a birthday celebration on the 14th. We'll be doing postcard campaign emails, and then action alerts. Those are sent out twice a week on where our bills are. And if you can click on those to send a message to your legislature about some of these priorities that we discussed, that would be great. Even if you can't join, and then make sure you share that with your friends, league members, and also capital letters. Check those out every week or every other week, depending on what's going on. I think it'll be a busy year, so we'll get them out probably every week. And you can look at the news, look at our observer reports. So the Lobbying Observer Corps is watching bills and committees, and they're filling out observer reports, and those are included on the capital letter. So get to see what we're up to as our volunteer lobbyists are doing at the Capitol or watching virtually. Yeah, so these are more information about where you can find news sources that cover Minnesota politics. So next,
Sam, could I
Yeah.
just add one thing quick about how much fun and how interesting it is to take these Monday lunches with us? Bring your sandwich, tune in, and people like Kathy Tom watch everything. People like Kathleen Doran Norton know everything about the environment. So if you're not watching that, they will clue you in. And then people like Kathy Tomsich really know the background on all the election stuff. And so we also have Lisa Larson, who is really the push behind the civics education bill, and Gina, who is working on, I haven't seen it introduced, maybe it's introduced and I didn't catch it, the end of life bill. These people know the policy, they know the background, so they can give you clues on what to look for. So the next time you watch that hearing, you will know who is important and you'll know what words to watch for. Almost everybody who has attended also has some kind of a personal relationship with some members of the legislature. So when some of these bills come up or some of the issues come up, they can say, oh, well, I know what that person really thinks, or here's what that person said when they were at our Meet the Candidates night. So you will get background that will broaden your understanding of what's going on. And so even if you are only occasionally watching hearings, you'll feel like you are in the know more than just reading the newspaper. So really, I urge you to contact Sam and join us. And if you can watch any of the hearings at all, add your voice. And if you know any of these legislators, clue us in on what you know about them. Excuse me for interrupting you, Sam, but I can't see the screen. So
No, that was great. Getting people excited is something that you're good at about this. And so that's a good point too, is you don't have to be an expert. We're not experts either, but we're just partnering with people that are, and also just learning more and more each day. I didn't mention I'm the civic engagement director, but this is my first full session on staff. So I'm going also new, I'm learning as we go. So it's fun to see all the ways that you can make your voice heard. So at the league here, I'm going to finish with some other ways, other than joining the Lobbying Observer Corps, if you're not already getting the Advocacy and Program Action Team emails, we send those out once a month for the third Friday. That's when we talk about the updates around the program for action planning, also legislative news. So that's a good option if you're a local league leader and want to report back to your league. Climate Change Task Force, if you just want to do climate change, you can still do that in the Lobbying Observer Corps, but you can also join us for once a month on the first Wednesday. And again, let me know if you want to sign up for these, but you can also do that online by looking at your subscriptions. These are, and then the action alerts, capital letter, I'm sure you're getting those already. If you're not, you can find them on our website or linked on the legislative session webpage. So here are our emails, and we don't have much time for questions, but if there are a few, I'm sure multiple people have the same questions, so please let us come off mute or raise your hand, and then copy these emails down if you need to. Again, I will follow up with these links if you hadn't have the time to copy them down, and thank you for coming, and for presenters. Thanks for all that you do for the league. There'll be a survey and more sessions to come. If you haven't signed up yet, make sure to check the email from Mary, or go on to our website to learn about the convention. County Observer Corps tomorrow at 11 a.m. So a lot going on, but the legislative session is, hopefully you feel better about that now.